Three, two. Welcome, mga kumikita explorers. Yan yung tawag namin sa inyo ngayon, guys. Those who are viewing Kumita Journey podcast. You're kumikita. So it's not past tense. No, it's a present progressive kumikita. You're earning. But our goal is for you to expand your earnings, whether you're a businessman, whether you're an entrepreneur, or whether you're a professional, may career ka, this is for you. We've been pang 12 na natin to. So we've covered a lot of topics. We talked about AI, ano pa? We talked about different types of business no na trending ngayon, like yung agri-tech, coffee business. We also talked about women entrepreneurship. And we also talked about the psychology of stress, lalo na sa business people. Like me, for instance, I also have a business. I also have a career. How do you manage stress to achieve your productivity? But for the last 3 episodes natin, naka-focus tayo sa business series. No? So we had a billionaire invited to our show. We also had the dean of Ateneo, JG Som, talking about the disruptive entrepreneurs specifically. And syempre, may basics on economy. Ngayon, we're gonna dive, okay? We're gonna dive and we're gonna uncover yung specifically yung mga economic policies and specifically ano yung economic health ngayon. Ang goal natin today is how do we make sense of our economic health and policies, because if we know how our economy is doing, we know how to take advantage of yung mga opportunities within yung mga policies, whether there is a problem or there's an opportunity. So we will try to uncover that. So this is for everyone na may pera. Okay? If you have money on your wallet, this is for you. No? Lalo na, we'll talk about inflation and all the economic indicators. Syempre, I'm not gonna be on my own. We have a very special guest. Okay, let me do an intro before I bring him in here. He's Professor Roni Balbieran. He's an economist. And you can see him, you can type him sa Google or sa YouTube, you'll see him there. No, he's often seen on news outlets providing commentary on, syempre, business and economics. But I'm interested to talk about his role in the Reid Foundation. He's currently is the vice president for REID. It's Research, Education, and Institutional Development at the Reid Foundation. It's a non-profit organization helping, I think, yung economy natin to promote economic growth. I think for business and also for government. No? We'll find out later. No? But he also teaches at the University of Asia and the Pacific and is part of the advisory team for a segment for an economic branch of the current BBM administration. Professor Roni, I'll bring you in here. Thank you for gracing us.
Yes. Good morning. Good morning po to all our viewers.
Thank you. Tell us more about yourself. What's your passion? And syempre, what led you to where you are today?
Well, passion. I'm passionate about using arts to propagate economic education. So I always refer to it as artistic economics. No? So we need to bring down the principles and knowledge of economics to our businessmen, to our children, to our teenagers, to our government and private sector workers. So that's my passion. So, but when I was taking economics way back in college, siguro 70 to 80% of my time was devoted to theater. No? So if we're talking about passion, I'm passionate about performing live on stage. But God has a different plan for me. So he led me to this particular career called economics, and now into mixing it up with urban and regional planning. So that's basically me.
Thank you. And Professor, what I noticed is, I was, studying your content also. What makes you different is I think you used your art background, no, to be able when you communicate. Kunwari may tanong si newscaster, you can translate yung sagot mo in ways na mas madaling maintindihan eh. That
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can capture that. I think you've used that.
That's the goal, no? So I try to improve. I always get the feedback from those who interviewed me, and then those who have watched me. So ano pa ba yung pwede nating improve? Naintindihan nyo pa talaga? So because there's no point, no, giving all this explanation and nobody can understand your explanation. So at the end of the day, we should be able to use the data, the information, the explanation.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. So let's start off. Ako, I'm curious no, about this Reid Foundation. Just reading through it, mukhang you're doing something really significant. Can you tell us more about this foundation and your role here?
Well, Reid Foundation is somehow, no, an informal child of the University of Asia and the Pacific Center for Research and Communication. It's just that we added another layer, no, which is to really work with private sector and government directly, no, so which we cannot do in the realm of university setting. So pagka university academic setting, so you will always have to maintain that purity in terms of academic excellence and yung academic recommendations mo. But Reid Foundation, very specific yung mandate namin to go into policy reform, specifically economic policy reform. We will analyze the data. We will also get the help of our university professors, researchers, statisticians, experts from different fields, engineers, environmentalists, lawyers, etc. And we put them together and then have a dialogue with our government partners, private sector partners, and really doing the dirty work in terms of enabling our leaders from the government and the private sector so that we can push very specific and high impact economic policy reform agenda, no? So ang mga ano namin, ang mga specializations namin, so we are heavy in infrastructure policies, tourism policies, national budget policies, transport and logistics, international trade. So those are the areas that we are heavily get ourselves into. So lahat ng mga wherever the big problems are, no? So we're trying to parang quote unquote the mission impossible. So we get our hands wet and dirty in these kinds of work, no? Medyo dati akala ko walang ganon, so but I'm very happy to be involved in this kind of work, working directly with our leaders so that we can make sure that something happens for our country.
That's good to hear. I like the terminology you use there, like the Mission Impossible team. Is this something does Reid initiator siya, or it's a mix of you initiate and also the government will also look and hey, meron kaming project dito, look at it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a mix. Sorry, it's a mix. Because, for example, we do things solely because we like it, we believe in it. So we share it with our friends from the government and private sector, or sometimes the government has this problem, they will approach us, and then we will try to help them. And then some development institutions have some funds they would like to help the country in terms of the sectors that I have mentioned, and then they have some funds and they will employ us, commission us to study the problem and to recommend solutions and work with the stakeholders in terms of really implementing those recommendations. So
Okay.
it's a mix, no? So we're hopefully there are sufficient uh, finance for supporting our cause, no? So but usually naman thankfully, we find ourselves in financially sustainable activities in which we can actually help our country approach, no, or pursue these recommendations.
Thank you for that. Okay, this is my this is where we go dive na, no? Let's go dig deep here. I like that you use the word problem, no? Strategies, no? Kasi the term policy, for people in business, or their employees for a company, the word policy usually brings to mind rules requiring, compliance. However, when I hear policy, I think of strategies, no? And strategies aren't mere to-do items, no? Or, a checklist of, eto, kailangan natin ma-accomplish to. That's not what strategy is, no? But when you say strategy, you're actually addressing a problem. So thus, policies are actually solutions to problems, no? For those who are entrepreneurs watching this, so when you hear the word economic policies, it means it's a solution to address a problem. More often than not, it's a complex problem. So with that in mind, what are the top economic policies that impress you ngayon for this administration, and what problems do they address? Will these policies effectively solve the problems?
Yeah. So it's good that you zeroed in on policy, no? So when you say policy kasi ang root word niyan is polis, no? Ibig sabihin city. So when you're talking about policy, it's really about building a city, building a civilization. So it's a way of governing. No? So therefore, it's just not about rules, no? But it's about creating programs so that you can build the civilization. So so hindi lang siya parang police na negative yung connotation, no? But it's something you can it's something positive. So how can you create this policy so that everybody can create their businesses around that particular rule, no? So in having said that, so what are the biggest policies? So you can is what are the biggest policies of the government right now? So number one, of course, we know that the president has appointed himself as the secretary of the Department of Agriculture. That's the blanket, biggest, largest, widest policy of this government. So we're talking about food security, food prices, agricultural productivity, etc. So why is this important? This is important because we have a country that is practically summarized into two worlds. No? One is the world of surpluses. So perhaps around 90 million of us have some sort of cash surplus. 90 million of Filipinos. But at the same time, you have 20 million who are poor. So they are living by 18 pesos per person per meal. So yun yung disparity. No? So parang yung isa napakalaking surplus, yung isa sobra-sobrang scarcity. And a large part, more than half of our poverty in the Philippines is actually in agriculture sector, in the rural areas. No? So they are the farmers, the fisher folks. And for the last 10 years before the pandemic, all the industries, practically all the industries in the country were actually growing very, very fast. But the agriculture sector has not been growing. It's an average of 1%. No? It was just growing at 1%. So nag-pandemic, and then all the more, no, na nagkaroon tayo ng recession, etc. But agriculture sector is still there, no? And then after the pandemic, every sector of our economy, every industry of our uh, economy has actually grown, and it's actually many of the industries are growing faster, double digit growth rates. Pero the agriculture is still growing at what, 1%. 1 to 2, maswerte ka na kung 2%. So therefore, for us to really build a Filipino civilization, so you really need to address this largest problem of our economy, which is the poverty, which is driven by the agriculture sector. And so therefore, if we are to second guess all the other policies of the government for the next 5 years, it's really about solving the tragedy of our farmers and the fisherfolk, which is comprised in this agriculture sector. So sabihin mo na lahat yan, no? Irrigation, agricultural productivity, transport and logistics infrastructure to help our production get into the market, get into our large, young, many middle income population of the Philippines. So that's how we will bridge that particular surplus of that one world of our country towards the world of scarcity and poverty in the agricultural sector. So, yan yung pinakamalaking policy. Of course, related to that would be construction. So, if you have agriculture, the largest part of helping agriculture is transport and logistics infrastructure. So that would already include our ports, airports, highways, local roads, farm to market roads, etc., etc. No? So we should be able to bring that. So those are the transportation infrastructure. At the same time, we need to build the logistics infrastructure, the warehouses, the cold chain, etc. So to make sure that we minimize the waste of the production of our farmers. No? So that's construction. And then, of course, the last part is digital economy, digitalization of our economy. And that means you are trying to digitalize two parts. No? You're trying to digitalize commerce, which is e-commerce, and you're trying to digitalize government services, which is e-government. So e-commerce and e-government will contribute to this thing called the digital economy. So all these three, no, agriculture, construction, and digitalization are the three most important, the largest economic policies that we can expect that will be pushed by the government, also working with the private sector. I think all the other policies will revolve around those three areas.
Okay. Napaisip ako actually kasi you don't hear that a lot in the news no? Kasi some of the news outlets are just focused on sometimes the bad news because it sells, di ba? Pero looking at what you're saying, I'm just trying to process it. And it makes sense kasi imagine, hindi ko narinig yan, ha? 1% lang yung growth ng agricultural sector. And our population is like, di ba, it's growing, and also, just to address the local demand, paano pa yung global demand, di ba? If our production, in agricultural production is 1 to 2%, I mean, that's not good. Huh?
And we're not even talking about what we call exported demand of
di
China.
ba? Yun.
So once they start letting all their citizens go to the Philippines,
diba?
So millions of them will be arriving to the Philippines very, very soon. So how do we address the food security once our tourists will start competing with our food? No, so it's not that we don't want them to compete, no, but this is an opportunity for tourism and the food sector. But we want to be prepared, no? So we want to produce as much as we can so that we can feed our people, at the same time feed the tourists that will actually bring us more businesses.
And you're right. And ito just for our Kumikita explorers here. Ito yung parang basic kasi if may scarcity tayo sa food, tataas yung bilihan, and all yung cost of living ng mga tao, yung employee nyo, tataas din, di ba? So it will drive prices high. So I agree with that, kasi yun nga, hindi naririnig sa news how critical the problem is. But let's dig deep. Ano yung out of the agriculture policy, ano yung pinaka critical? I know you mentioned irrigation, etc., supply chain, logistics. Ano yung pinaka important project ngayon for agriculture?
Well, masyadong madami, but I mentioned the infrastructure. But aside from infrastructure, I call it the e-commercialization of agriculture. So you have to bring the power of e-commerce and digital platforms to agriculture. And we've seen that happen, no? Starting with the pandemic, no? But we really have to think as a country, as a nation, no? Why, for example, e-commerce has grown by 93% in the middle of the pandemic, and then when it normalized, it grew by 25%, 20 to 25%. And our agriculture sector has not grown by more than 2%. So, pwedeng ilagay mo na lang yung butal
Oo
ni
nga.
e-commerce growth. Ilagay mo na lang yung 3 or yung 5% do sa 25, ibigay mo kay agriculture. So, in short, there is something missing here. No? How can e-commerce grow that phenomenally high when our agriculture cannot grow? So, saan tayo bumili? Di ba? So, saan natin binili yung mga pagkain na yun at lahat ng mga binili natin in the e-commerce platform? So, therefore, there's really demand. There's no argument whether there's really demand for our food. There is. So, the problem is to really have that physical and digital connectivity between our farms and our consumers. And I think e-commerce and digital logistics have already solved it for all other products and services. Ang hindi na lang natin na-figure out, paano talaga ibaba yun to agriculture. And I think that is the biggest solution that we need to think about for the next 3 to 5 years, so that we can actually see an explosion of economic and business opportunities, no? Yung e-commercialization. So ako, tatanungin mo ako parang, edi i-expropriate. If you're familiar with expropriate, no? Government, pag sinabi mo expropriation, like yung bahay mo tatamaan ng kalsada ng gobyerno. So for the common good, the government has all the power to get the private property. No? So that's for the common good. Ang
That's
tawag
not
doon ay
good.
power of the no, that's good because for the power of the eminent domain. So everybody, so you need this expressway, and then the
Tama,
government
tama.
will buy it on market price, etc. So that's what you call expropriation. Government getting your property for common good. No? So pero ang sabi ko diyan, kung i-expropriate natin yung mga executives ng mga e-commerce and digital logistics, mga executives ng Lazada, Shopee, tapos yung JT Express, LBC, QuadX, lahat. Let's expropriate them for 6 months. Come on, guys.
Let's
Agriculture
make things
needs your
focus.
help. Yes. So can you combine all your brain powers so that we can figure this thing out, how to really connect our farmers directly to our customers?
We should do that. We should do that. In fact, ito, based on it validates what you're saying kasi I met with some agri-tech business and yung pinaka-problem daw nila, walang internet nga eh. Yung mga farmers, wala silang pang GCash. So,
Yeah.
I mean, talagang it's sad. How can you transfer funds? How can they grow kung hindi nga dumadating yung pera sa kanila? Diba? How can they increase production? So that's good.
Yes.
Let's move to the next topic. No, we have a lot, but that's really powerful stuff. No, eto, let's talk about something very important. For me kasi, for all entrepreneurs and business people, selling is very important skill, particularly for individuals, occupying leadership positions, such as, business people, kayo, entrepreneurs, and more importantly, for the position of the president, of the Philippines. The ability, syempre, to sell policies, garner support from Congress, and syempre, to motivate citizens, to support you in crucial times. So in my view, the most significant indication of how effective president is when it comes to selling is it's his ability to secure foreign investments. So my question is, how does the current FDI fare this year? I saw some news kasi this week yata na may outflow eh, may mga nag-withdraw eh, no? I understand there's been but there's an inflow also on April. So, in your view, what's the trajectory? How does our FDI this year, this quarter, and yung projected FDIs next year? And tell us more about FDI for those people who don't know what it means. No?
Well, there are basically two types of foreign investments. No? So, one is yung what we call hot money. No, so these are the foreigners who are just investing in the stock market, etc. So they can put their money from their country to the Philippines with just a push of a button or uh, a click, no, a mouse click, and then the money will go to the Philippines. That's basically portfolio investment. So, but that's good thing. One press, pasok yung pera. Pero ang bad thing nun, isang click lang din, the money can go out tomorrow or this minute. So that's hot money. That's why they call it hot money for portfolio investment. And the second part is foreign direct investment. So foreign direct investment issues, they really bring their money to really build something here in the country. So they will establish their factories, their offices here. They will set up all their organization, their branch in the Philippines. So it's very difficult to lure that particular money because that means long-term investment po yun. No? So once they decide uh, to go inside the Philippines, then okay, sige, let's we will bet on the Philippines future. So and so it's rather difficult to actually pull it out. No? So that's FDI. So that's portfolio investment and foreign direct investment. So our foreign direct investments usually naman nagre-range yan between 2 to 4 billion dollars. No? So it went as much as 8-9 billion dollars a year. No? So pero nung pandemic, so medyo alam naman buong bansa naman yan. So but if we compare our foreign direct investments with the rest of the Southeast Asia, medyo hindi tayo ganun ka-competitive. So, I think with what's happening now, so it's a wait and see game as far as the foreign direct investors are concerned. So, I think we need to wait it out for this year, 2023, kasi parang urong-sulong sila. No? So, the least that they can do is on their share, no, to the Philippine branch here in the Philippines. So ang mangyayari ngayon diyan is okay, kung makikita niyo yung monthly movements, parang urong-sulong lang. So because of everybody is trying to guess what's gonna happen for this year 2023 and the year 2024, where everybody's trying to predict a global recession again. No? So, or at least a recession in America. So from the point of view of long-term bet on a country's future, especially the Philippines, and then you have a new president. So if you're the foreign investor, are you going to bet your money on the long-term future of our country? So parang ngayon, parang uh, wait and see game yan. And that's why hindi mo pa makikita yung phenomenal increase in our foreign direct investment. However, as we have seen from the foreign trips of our president, marami namang nag-pledge. No? So different naman yung pledge. So matagal pa yung mga 1 to 2 years yon before the pledge gets translated to actual foreign direct investment. So those pledges, when we actually demonstrate to the world that we are somehow more resilient than other countries in relation to this upcoming global recession, I think we can receive this foreign direct investment towards the end of the year and first half of next year, and we will realize these pledges, no, of foreign direct. investment. So I think ganun yung basa ko diyan on how we will receive this actual money for direct investments for our country.
Okay, that's good. I think it's the same with the startup business here in the Philippines. No, yung mga investor, they're waiting to see if your economy is doing good based on the economic indicators. No, just like in any business, may mga KPIs yan. No, and then yung market as well. You're looking at. But as an entrepreneur, uh, you have to sell your company, and the value of your company, to your investor. So I want to ask, we're curious because we don't see how the current economic team is selling the Philippines. What is the Philippines' unique selling proposition, and how do we, ano yung messaging natin sa mga foreign investors? I'm curious.
Well, if I'm gonna sell it, there are basically three indicators for judging the health of an economy. So three things. So you have the population, and then you have the money, and then you have the animal spirit. Those are three most important indicators of the health, especially long-term health of an economy. So if you have many young and growing population, so you know that both consumer markets and supply of labor force to that particular production side of the GDP, then you will be insured for quite some time, at least for the next 5 to 10 years, if not 50 years. No? So, population, and then number two, money. So, whichever country has the cash flow, no? Sa business, ganyan din naman eh. So, cash is king. So, does the country have healthy cash flow? At the same time, does the country have sufficient savings and reserves? And then lastly, additional income from abroad. So we're talking about money, cash flow, reserves, and additional income from abroad. And then number three is animal spirit. Our businesses and consumers do they have confidence of the future? So that's why the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, minomonitor nila, they monitor the business confidence index and the consumer outlook index. So that's animal spirit. So animal spirit is defined by John Maynard Keynes as the optimism of businesses and consumers to spend, to consume. No? So for businesses to invest more, for consumers to continue consuming. Kasi pag nawala yun, then the population will stop consuming, and so therefore the economy will shrink faster than expected. So tatlo yun. So the question is, do we have the people, the money, and the animal spirit? If you take a look, so we'll skip all the data, and we have sufficient population, many young and still growing population. We have sufficient cash flow. We have sufficient savings and reserves, and we have recovered the trend of our net additional income from abroad, OFWs and Filipino companies from abroad remitting their money to the Philippines. So we are now recovering that particular inflows. And then, of course, animal spirit. So we have always had good business confidence and consumer outlook. And we kind of lost it during the pandemic, but when the lockdowns and then the mobility restrictions have been lifted, then you can see from the BSP data that our business confidence index and the consumer outlook index are steadily increasing. So if I'm talking to the foreign businesses, foreign investors, what are you really looking for? And if you believe that these are the three indicators for your businesses to be predictably stable, so the Philippine economy will be one of the few countries who will have all these three all at the same time in the middle of a predicted global recession. So your best bet would be the Philippines.
Napag-isip ako dyan. Kasi,
Yeah, more than
ganun eh.
more than two thirds of the world are running out of population. So they are having problems with their pension systems, their labor markets. China will be losing more than 170 million
Oh,
workers
grabe.
from their labor force. It's more than the population of the Philippines, and that's their problem. So
Mm-mm.
if they grow again, no, at the rate of 8 to 10% per year of their GDP, the question is, can their labor market supply the labor that they need to grow at that pace? They have a big problem. So our economy, our problem, the only problem is when we really grow at a phenomenal rate of 8 to 10%, which we have not achieved. No,
Mm.
if we grow because we will be receiving these foreign direct investments, the recovery of agriculture. If we grow by 8 to 10%, the question is, will we have enough labor? The answer is we have. The problem is the other countries are also trying to get our labor because they're running out of
Global.
people.
Yeah.
So
Talent, diba?
that
Global
would be
talent.
our next problem is the wage rate of Filipinos will be going up because all the world will be competing for labor, Filipino labor.
That's good. That's good. I like what you said, the way yung tatlong indicators, no? Kasi usually, 'di ba, GDP, inflation, yun yung mga tinitingnan, 'di ba? But the way to actually sell the Philippines are those three things. And I'm parang it's more on market centric yung pitch, no? Hey, this is the market. Ito yung potential of the market. Ito yung buying potential. Ito yung worker potential as well. So that's for me. I learned a
Yeah.
lot from your answer for that. Ito, we covered this, no? So let's move to consumption. I've been in conversations with different entrepreneurs and friends. No, I've been told that the Philippines, as far as economy behavior is concerned, is faced with a challenge kasi consumer driven economy. No, so we tend to consume and buy things. Correct me if I'm wrong later, no? Rather than create. No. So we discussed this in recent episode, pero different angle. It's more focused on fewer entrepreneurs or creators, but more on consumers. Kasi if you look at our business landscape, yung the big conglomerates, most of their businesses are focused on current demands, like nakafocus sa consumer. Like real estate, di ba, yung mga malls, banks, these are consumer-driven businesses. But we have fewer disruptive entrepreneurs creating new technologies, new products, and innovations. Like for instance, South Korea, diba? They have like Samsung, etc. No, and Kia and automotive. Indonesia, yung closest neighbor natin, has this technology app like Gojek. They have Traveloka, which is being used across the world. No, are we as a culture risk averse because we're focused on consumption, or do we prefer, in a way, we prefer satisfying ourselves rather than investing in the future and creating new business? What are your thoughts there?
Um, well, first of all, from the point of view of the national economy, there's really nothing wrong for our economy to be consumer centric, no? Because that's what you want. Uh, we have, magugulat ka, for the last 70 years, bago nag-pandemic, our economy has never been affected by any global economic event because 72% of our economy is driven by family consumption. So there are few episodes nagkaroon ng recession ang Pilipinas, and those were EDSA crisis, coup d'etat, and then El Nino. In the middle of Asian financial crisis, we had El Nino, but our economy only went down by negative 0.5. But the rest of our neighbors, some performed at negative 13 during the Asian financial crisis. So in the last 70 years. So we did not enter recession because of global economic event. No? It was because of internal politics or bad weather or climate related. So what's my point? My point is that we have a strong consumption base. So we should be able to take advantage of that. Now, in relation to the production side, no? So yes, I agree that we are not a very, very quote unquote productive economy. So we have at least around 20 to 25% of our economy is driven by investments. No? So our neighbors are into around 40 to 45%. So yun yung isa. So how do we encourage businesses? So uh, there's a medyo may isang sophisticated way of talking about it, no? So, and then the other are practical operational. O yung isang sophisticated na usapan is, well, the Filipinos, hindi naman dahil tamad sila. No? Filipinos for me are one of the most efficient races in this world. So, kung ano yung efficient, yun ang gagawin. No? So, but what my point is, for example, we were very, very productive in terms of our manufacture and exports of furniture, garments, etc. So, but what happened to them? So, most of them died. Why? Because we are not, uh, our policies are not centered around protecting our manufacturers, the producers, the creators, uh, in protecting them. And so, what are the some sort of protection? Number one, exchange rate. So we have allowed our exchange rate to fluctuate 10 to 20% in 1 month or in a year, no, and that actually hurts or even kills our quote unquote creators. No? So ang tawag kasi diyan the Dutch disease. If you are able to export more, but the price of exporting more is you will have more dollar inflows to your country. When you have more dollars, exchange rate tends to go down. And when exchange rate tends to go down, then imported products will be more competitive and even cheaper than domestic production, domestic goods, domestically produced goods. So, what will happen? The domestic industries may easily die if you don't defend your exchange rate from appreciating too much. So, ano mangyayari? Tingnan mo, you mentioned a lot of those industries where our quote unquote creators are into. So real estate, education, health, etc., infrastructure. Why? Because these are the sectors that are shielded from exchange rate. But they're talking about manufacturing, exports of goods. You're talking about very, very sensitive industry, sensitive to exchange rate fluctuations. And so, what are you going to do? You're going to be investing in a factory for 15 to 25 years, but you cannot predict your exchange rate, and it might actually kill you next year because uh, out without doing anything, you will be uncompetitive when the exchange rate dives, for example, from 55 to 45. So all of a sudden, the importers, without doing anything, will actually sell cheaper than your domestic production. So yun yung isang, I think, of course, it will spark a debate, no, among economists in terms of exchange rate policy. But as you can see, for example, you mentioned South Korea. So their policy was to actually depreciate their currency. So how much is the exchange rate of Korea now? Exchange rate of Taiwan, exchange rate of Vietnam, etc. No? Or even the exchange rate of China. So they defend their exchange rate, their currency, not to appreciate too much because it will kill, no, their entrepreneurship, their domestic investment activities. So I think at the base, if you want to promote massive investments, therefore, if you're talking about investment, we're talking about long term. So if you're talking about long term, therefore certain rates, certain environment, business environments must be predictable over a long term period. And exchange rate policy, no, is rather unpredictable in this country.
Grabe, no? So, some people don't even see exchange rate, no, as a big factor. But for me, there's a direct connection, a powerful connection. So that's why the export industry, the manufacturing industry is struggling.
Yeah, and that's why we're bleeding. Our trade deficit
Ah,
has
yes,
been
yes.
ballooning, no? And that's why you have more pressure on the exchange rate now. So before, ang trade deficit natin is just around 2 to 3% of our GDP. And our OFWs and BPOs and foreign companies from abroad, pag pinagsama-sama mo yan, net of foreigners here in the Philippines remitting their earnings to their home country, the contribution to the GDP is 10%, no? So therefore we were not noticing our trade deficit before
Mm-hmm.
because our net additional income from abroad is 10% and
Yeah.
our trade deficit is 2-3%. Right now, I think the first quarter, our trade deficit, no, trade in goods and services, is negative 15% of our GDP. And our net additional income from abroad, because it was just recovering from the pandemic, is roughly around 8%. It went down to as low as 5. Now it's up to 8%. But the 8% cannot cover, no, cannot cover the bleeding of the trade deficit at negative 15. And so therefore, that's a huge problem. And so therefore, makikita mo, everybody's talking about helping our exporters again, manufacturers again, and then talking about, let's buy local. But at the end of the day, what is our exchange rate policy? China has been, America, Canada, and other countries have been talking to China. You must allow your currency to appreciate because we have been pouring in a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
dollars in your
Yes.
country. So allow your exchange rate to go down. And so
Mm-hmm.
what has China been doing? China has been buying, the Chinese central bank has been buying all these extra dollars,
Yes.
and so their dollar reserves keeps on ballooning, but their exchange rate is almost as fixed
Yes. Yes.
because a little bit of reduction in their exchange rate will kill millions, hundreds of millions of Chinese workers in their manufacturing sector that exports to America, to Canada, to Europe. So they're gonna protect it at all costs. In the Philippines, I am not sure why we are not aggressive in doing that. Perhaps we have so much money that we can really give away these sectors, our manufacturing, our exports. No, so
Yeah.
at
So that's
but of
the
course, that's a policy debate, an ending policy debate. It has been a debate for 20 years now among economists. So hopefully there will be an honest to goodness, serious discussion about our exchange rate and promoting the destiny of our manufacturers and our exporters.
Mhm. Okay, good, good. Let me shift the topic, which is something you covered. Because in my opinion, the Philippines safety net has been, the OFW remittances. OFWs are like, they're like special forces, consistently fulfilling their mission. Instead of, using their money abroad, they send it home here in the Philippines, fueling our economy. So if our economy lags, diba, you hear it every time at the end of the year. The remittances are like shielding us from harsh conditions na economy natin. So they've saved us, multiple times towards the end of the year. So they're like, for me, they're like a blessing. They're like an insurance protection. So if OFWs are one of the most precious, economic forces, I'm just using that term, if there's such a term. What safeguards are we implementing now to protect this, crucial insurance? Ano yung mga policies ng government ngayon to protect them?
Well, I'm happy that there's a Department of Migrant Workers. Recognizing that actually our OFWs is as big, if not bigger, than the agriculture sector. No? So again, I mentioned 10% of GDP. Their amount of remittances is at least, if not more, than 10% of our GDP. So the Department of Migrant Workers is able to put in one department all these government agencies that will try to protect our OFW. So my hope is that we should be able to realize this more, and then make it as a matter of foreign affairs policy. So we meaning we should be able to have this bargaining power. So, hey guys, all of you countries, you're running out of people. So I guess the valuation for our Filipino workers is going up. So I think we must renegotiate our terms and conditions in terms of you getting the workers from the Philippines. No? So I think yun yung iniintay nating policies, na stricter policies in terms of reflecting our new valuations in terms of the role of Filipino workers, both the unskilled and the skilled workers of Filipinos, in terms of our international affairs, foreign affairs with our neighbors, the countries that we are dealing with. So in terms of foreign direct investments, so we should be able to see more direct link in terms of these trade negotiations, investment negotiations that are actually attached to the conditions of the safety, the health of our Filipino workers abroad.
Yeah, that's good to hear, kasi for us entrepreneurs, for business people, we competitive na, 'di ba? So kailangan yung mga nag-employ should be focused on protecting, getting the competitive pay, and at the same time alagaan mo, you have all these benefits ready. So in a way dapat ganun din yung Philippines, yung government of the Philippines to also look at it that way, kasi ito yung supply natin,
Yeah.
Since we're talking about that, let's talk about the different leadership styles, or when it comes to the financial economics, for the past 3 presidents. Kasi I have some some comments about that on our social media page. And for us, this is important for entrepreneurs and those managing their finances. Siyempre, if you have cash, this discussion includes you. So we have, in the financial industry, you have conservatives, you have aggressive risk takers, and you have moderates, who are in the middle. So knowing where you stand is crucial. So you understand your default, style. So your profile determines the direction you naturally, gravitate towards. If former President Pinoy, I think, is a conservative when it comes to his financial decision making. He has reduced our debt. He has a lot of savings. And if former President Duterte, I think, is aggressive investor when it comes to infrastructure projects, where does President BBM fall? Is he a moderate? Is he conservative, or is he hyper aggressive?
Well, we will still see, no? So, but I think it's turning out to be he's somewhere in between. No? So, first, we saw that he continued, expanded, and promised to modernize the Build program. So that's why he launched the Build Better More. So this is an indication that uh, I am promising. So if I were President Marcos, no, parang indication yon, sinabi niya na I will continue the personality, no, the aggression of President Duterte in terms of infrastructure, which is correct. No? So you have to do that. And then in relation to financial sector, I think um, the economic team is also prudent, no? So in terms of our taxation, and they're talking about the taxation of the digital economy. So they're talking about reorganizing the government. They're talking about reforming the pension systems of our uniformed personnel. So what does it tell us? So this is somehow similar to the prudence, no, the conservative approach of the Pinoy administration in terms of making sure that we don't get into unmanageable, uncontrollable fiscal deficits. No? So you have aggression on the infrastructure spending side, but they're also trying to make sure that this is actually covered in terms of our sources of funds, no, our tax collection. So they kept on talking about the digitalization of BIR, and now they're showcasing the exposing the corruption in BIR, and then they're saying they're cleaning it up. So we should be able to expect larger collections by the BIR, by the BOC. So I think it's a combination of both. But I think what our viewers should realize is that across presidents, we should be we should not be concentrating too much on the personality of the president, because if you what should we be looking at, no? So we should be looking at the quality of the cabinet members. So what are their CVs? No? Ano bang resume ng mga cabinet members natin? And so as you can see, no, so the economic and business related departments like the Department of Finance, Department of Budget Management, NEDA, DTI. So and then some infra, ano, DPWH, the OTR. So if you've seen the appointments, the secretaries appointment to this position on top of the leadership of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, you can see that since the time of Pinoy all the way up to now, no, President Bongbong Marcos, you see a solid economic team behind the president. So therefore, nakita niya, that's really the unspoken recipe in terms of the resiliency of our economy, because we have instituted and we have been instituting all these economic reforms in terms of tax collection, spending, etc. So parang tuloy-tuloy lang yan. It's just a matter of character and matter of tone and delivery of speeches of our presidents. But makikita nyo, ang unsung heroes natin ayun, the quality, the magnitude of technical expertise of this economic team. No? So our entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs, startups may disregard the other marites from other departments, which may not affect them, but it's good to talk about them. No? But I think tingnan nyo yung quality ng mga secretaries natin. Of course, economists will have differences in opinions. Opinions lang naman namin ito. But at the end of the day, you cannot argue with the CVs of these secretaries. So talagang magagaling to across the presidents. And I think that's where I'm very thankful, no, as a Filipino, na okay, nagpapalit yung prinsipyo, character ng president natin, but they make sure that they rely on professionals, the pros, in terms of economic management. No? So, and then some may kaunting disagreements in terms of finer implementations, but I think there is basically general agreement across economic professionals in terms of properly managing our economy. So I think if I were to add, no, aside from the personality of being aggressive and being conservative, no, so the economic team, yan, DBM, DOF, NEDA, DTI, sama mo DPWH, DOTR. So yun ang mga key departments natin, and the secretaries of those departments, yun doon yung makikita kung the government is really serious in addressing the economic situation of our country. Kapag kayon, nagkaroon na tayo ng appointments na dahil kaibigan lang o dahil kapatid, etc., pero walang CV to handle that particular department, then we will start to get in trouble. But so far, hindi pa nangyayari yun. And remember, marami ditong mga second or third timers na yung mga cabinet secretaries natin ngayon. So, which goes to show na across political boundaries, ang
Continuity.
appointment, yung appointment ng economic team, hindi pwedeng magalaw yan. Dapat it's reserved for the professionals. Otherwise, our economy will be in trouble, and our startup entrepreneur world natin will be very, very unpredictable kapag nahaluan ng politika yung appointment nitong economic team. Yung iba, I won't have any comment on the appointment of the other agencies, no? But ito, importante yung mga sinabi kong department.
Alam mo ba, Prof, that was actually my second to the last question. But you mentioned that. But no, that's good. That's good. And here, no, ito na yung second to the last question. But before that, I'm in 100% agreement with you kasi the secret to a successful business. So those of you who are watching, you want to have a successful business, it's really about building a great team. And what do? You look at their CVs, diba? Running a great company without a strong team is impossible. You cannot grow on your own, diba? So a great leader is someone who can identify the right person with the right competencies for the right hire. So choosing the right person, it amplifies yung value, yung strength mo, no? And yung output. So it's like a multiplier. So if we apply that to economics, that's the economic team, no? Of all the teams, I agree with you, Professor. It's really the economic team that it's the secret sauce to our success. So here's my quick question, Prof. Roni. Is this the dream team? Yung economic team natin ngayon?
It depends on how we define the dream, no?
Parang Dream Team USA.
Parang it depends, no? So it depends on the characteristics and the dream that you want, no? So but if you're talking about I think they went to the more conservative approach, no? Because we entered the new administration with our economy just recovering from the pandemic, you know? So you don't want to be too experimental in terms of your economic management. And so I think it's a good mix of wisdom and energy, no? So for example, we have the wisdom of Secretary Ben Jokno, no? So talagang hindi na natin bibilangin kung ilang administrasyon yung pinagsilbihan niya. But at the same time, we have a very very young DBM secretary, no? So Secretary Pangandaman, no? So that should be able to have that dynamics, no, in terms of ano ba yung sinasabi ng history versus ano ba yung pulso ng mga kabataan ngayon in terms of budget requirement, no? So I'm very happy na we have a young budget secretary, so naiintindihan niya kung ano yung damdamin nating mga younger generations. And so you have the wisdom of long-term economic policies, no? So Secretary Jokno, but you have a very young Secretary of Budget. So, gandang dynamics yun. Tapos you have the Department of Trade and Industry na ano rin, in the middle of government and private sector, no? So the Secretary Pascual has been involved with the private sector for a long time. At the same time, presidente yan dati ng Management Association of the Philippines.
MEP.
Pero at the same time, naging president siya ng University of the Philippines. So a good mix of government and private sector, which is, I think, if we're looking for this quote-unquote whole of nation approach, and then across ages, no? So I think we have a good promise of the future in terms of our economic team, no? So meron tayong ganitong dynamics. Of course, kung ako tatanungin, I again my bias is no, invite more. So siguro yung mga undersecretaries or yung kanilang mga chief of staff. So invite more from the age range of 30 to 40, those who are very adept in e-commerce, IT, AI, no? So that we can combine historical wisdom with artificial intelligence, about youthful energy, about creative spirits, about creative destruction that you entrepreneurs are talking about. No, so para we can explore, siguro we can reserve 30% of our economic policy making into experimentation, especially now that we are entering year 2 of the Marcos Jr. administration. I think medyo nakita na natin na okay, medyo nakaka-recover pala tayo strongly from the pandemic. And probably on year 2, we can start experimenting more, putting more technology and other creativity in our economic policy making. And so therefore, may explore pa natin yung mga untapped potentials, especially that we all know that the Filipinos are very, very creative. No? So we have not put a valuation. So yung mga nakikinig sa atin ngayon, very familiar with the word valuation. But we have not actually put a value and take advantage and leverage. No? So another word that is familiar with our listener, leverage. No? So valuation and leverage. We have not valued and we have not leveraged our creativity. No? But good news. So there's an amendment, no, there's a new law about the creative sector, no, and there's an upcoming law about the amendment of the intellectual property code. So
That's good.
and then there's an amendment on the Public Service Act, no, opening up our industries from transportation, energy, telecoms, so we can expect more money after this risky proposition on global recession. Then our laws, we have new laws actually. Kung ma-realize ng mga entrepreneurs natin, we have new laws that will actually open up our country for huge amount of foreign investment.
I
Amendment
heard
of the
about that.
Public Service Act. So marami yan sa telecom, sa transport, sa energy. So we can welcome those, and then you can have those startups in those areas. Basahin niyo yung bagong amendment. We have the new law again on the creative sector. We have the new law on the electric vehicle industry development act. Hopefully we will have a new law by the third quarter of this year on the PPP, the Public Private Partnership Act. No, so after 30 years we will amend it. No, so and then it will open up, the sectors, the infrastructure space of government, usually reserved to government, and it will be opened up to the private sector. You should also take a look into that, how the entrepreneurs, the startups can get partnerships with these big tycoons, big conglomerates, attach yourselves to them, be partners, subcontractors, and be able to modernize our Philippine infrastructure, help the government through the money of the private sector, the expertise of the private sector. So ang daming mga bagong batas na parating, na dumating at parating, and therefore we should be able to make money and build our country's future. We have not actually taken off, in terms of mobilizing our assets. So nagsisimula pa lang tayo. 80% of our country is not reachable by e-commerce. So so with 25 to 95% growth of e-commerce, we still have
Opportunities.
80% that is not reachable by Lazada, by Shopee, by e-commerce, no. So
Di ko alam yan.
if we are still talking about the urban areas, and perhaps our entrepreneurs are already happy with that 20% reach, no. We're talking about Manila, Central Luzon, Angeles, etc., and then Cebu, Iloilo, Davao, Jensan, but how about the other parts of our country? So ano pa lang yan, very, very young. We're still very young in terms of saturating the resources, the areas of our country. And so I think there's a lot of business opportunities for entrepreneurs out there. Of course, again, ang ano ko doon, just to be practical, unahin nyo yung mga walang kinalaman sa exchange rate, no?
Yes, yes.
So yun ang ano doon. But aside, with that in mind, of course, yung sama-sama natin dapat pag-isipan is paano mo maililink yung agriculture, yung rural areas, to, first of all, to the manufacturing sector, so that you can increase the value added of the agricultural output, agricultural production, and then all the way to other sectors like tourism, no? So I was just in Puerto Princesa, no? So there's a huge amount of productivity, production assets in South Palawan. At the same time, yung Puerto Princesa has booming potentials in terms of tourism, hotels, resorts, restaurants, but a large part of the requirements are being imported, no? Either from Luzon, from the main Luzon, or imported from abroad. So why not pag-usapin natin yung mga tourism establishments with our farmers using digital platforms, no? And actually that's what my friends are, many of my friends are actually competing, no, to get to this space as soon as possible, no? Nagko-compete yung mga friends ko dito sa paggawa nito mga platforms na ito. So get into that, and manufacturing, to tourism, to ang dami nating pwedeng gawin. And so therefore, the amount of money that we have as consumers will be minimized in terms of import spending. So we are receiving more than 2 trillion worth of additional money, but we are actually bleeding by more than 2 trillion in terms of our trade deficit. So paano yun?
Yes,
Pinamigay lang natin yung na-receive natin pera.
Sayang,
so if we can use that money to buy from our agricultural areas, from our farmers and fisher folks, then they themselves will have purchasing power to get into e-commerce as well. So you can see that particular ecosystem that will
Mm.
be created and expanded because
Mm.
of all these links, no, physical and digital connectivities, taking advantage of our resources.
You know what? You make perfect sense. From just to summarize what you said, no, we have a great economic team, diverse backgrounds, relevant to where we are at this point. We have laws that are being passed. There are programs that are being passed that's conducive for all entrepreneurs, no, all business people to really start, you know, exploring and also be excited about. And then we all have these opportunities in all these sectors to grow, no. And you nailed it. And in fact, that's what we want to hear, no. Okay, all these programs tataas yung ano yung sinasabi mo animal spirit. If we
Yeah.
hear that, we don't hear. Yeah.
Yes, and mind you, no, i- i- the main problem of our economy, or the main problem, let's be specific, the main problem of our financial sector is that we have so much extra cash in our country. They don't know what to do with it.
Mm,
So
interesting.
it's a challenge to all the listeners out there, to all the current and potential entrepreneurs out there. If the cash is not a problem, the problem of our banks is that they are holding on to too much cash assets.
Tama naman.
All the corporations have borrowed, all the individuals have borrowed, and they still have more than 3 trillion worth of extra cash, and they don't know what to do with it. So the challenge is for us to actually, work together. Not Don't work alone. Hindi na uso
Mhm.
yung may startup ka tapos ikaw mag-isa.
Wala na yan.
It's not
Ecosystem yan.
it's
Oo.
an ecosystem, especially if you're talking about a company that will require supply chain and logistics. Now, the name of the game for your startup to succeed is if you have a strong partner in supply chain and logistics. I have seen many startups who have failed because they tried to do their supply chain and logistics on their own. So they have a
Mm.
good platform, they have a good website, they can buy and sell, etc. But the back end of the supply chain and
Yun
logistics,
yung
they
madugo.
try to do manually. So leave it to the pros. Get a
Yeah,
partner,
outsource. Yeah.
outsource it with a strong experienced professional in supply chain and logistics, because we have 7,600 plus islands in the country. And if you wish to cover the whole Philippines on your own and you don't have any experience in supply chain and logistics, you're gonna die
Mhm.
immediately.
That's good.
No, I have seen those startups. No? So
Yeah.
find get your platforms, get your business idea, but if it requires supply chain logistics, don't ever commit that mistake
Oh,
of
yeah.
doing the supply chain and logistics on your own. But if you have that partner,
Tama.
the problem is just creating the idea, uh, your path to market, no, shorten that particular that path, and then I think the money should not be a problem, because on the other side of the fence, the banks have a very different problem. They want to
Mhm.
lend, but they want to lend to very, very good
Safe.
ideas,
Mhm.
safe, and very, very rich in potential, no,
Mhm.
of ideas, and you have that.
Mhm. Well, again, that we've reached, I think, yung summary mo from the opportunities available. I think that's the ending already. What do we wanted to hear? We're inspired. We didn't know a lot of those things that you mentioned, Prof. Ang dami palang cash, daming opportunities on the supply chain side. So madami tayong ideas that we can take advantage of to address that problem. Prof, how do they reach you? If they have questions, if you have some work that they want to they want to consume your content or get to know more about you, how do they reach you?
Oh, well, you can message me doon sa Facebook page, no? Sa yung Prof. Ronilo Balbieran. So, or email me at ronilo.balbieran@gmail.com, no, for very specific questions. So, but of course, Chris is always here, no? So we can
Yes.
work together. And
Yes,
then
yes.
simula lang to,
Uh,
I think me, Reid Foundation, and my friends, these are not theoretical. No? So I've been working with a lot of people in terms of all these directions, and I can tell you now na hindi to paunahan. No? So marami nang nasimulan in terms of agri-tech. No? Mga previous episodes nyo, it's about agri-tech. During the pandemic, I also had a project, no, in relation to agri-tech, yung delivery project. But hindi yan paunahan, hindi yan pagalingan. So I think all entrepreneurs can interconnect. No? So the name of the game is you really need to interconnect. That's how we can leverage what's available out there. That's how we can access the resources out there. The millions of small businesses out there that need our services, from platforms to advice, to systems, to management, operations, etc. So, ang daming jo pong pwedeng gawing services para sa ating mga small businesses. So, but it will be tiring to do it manually. It will be tiring to do it on your own. So, if all the entrepreneurs, all the startups out there will help each other, we should be able to figure out best solutions, foundational solutions for millions of our SMEs out there, and we should be able to work together with all the sectors of our economy, primarily with the agriculture sector, and interlinking it with the other sectors. And we should be able to address poverty and increase our income for everybody, and so we should be able to have a better life for the 20 million Filipinos out there that are living at 18 pesos per person per meal. And so if we are able to increase their income, and that will have another ripple effect for our economy. This should be big businesses for everybody. Na I mean, I cannot even estimate the amount of economic growth and GDP growth that can happen to our country over the next 25 years if you guys, the entrepreneurs, the creative ones, the creative destroyers of this country's economy, please do your work, be a risk taker for the sake of our country's future.
Ay, ganda ng ending natin. Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Ronnie, for gracing us today, for giving us your insight, the things that we don't know, and also for inspiring us with some insights that are so powerful. So with that, we end. Thank you again, and hopefully we could do another session, Prof. Ronnie, about another topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. See you again in our next episode. Okay.